friends, welcome back to my channel and happy Wednesday to everyone. We are continuing on with our August Crash Your Stash theme, and this little album is going to be a revisit from ones that we have made in the past. This is a wallet fold album, and of course I want to mix it up a little by showing some different variations that you can do with it. So it's a sweet little fall album here in a nice 4x6 size. We have some beautiful corner pockets here with inserts, as well as full page flips for the center. And then there are also some tabbed inserts that go into the pockets. So if you're interested in creating this with me, then stick with me and we will make it together. I'm going to work with the Give Thanks Hot Buy paper pad. This is a Recollections pad from Michaels. It has quite a lot of beautiful fall patterns in here. There's also plaids, which you know is my favorite, and a fair bit of foiling as well, so it's a little bit fancy. And I really like that it has a more updated kind of contemporary color palette. There are oranges in there, but some of the pumpkins are grays and beautiful greens, so it seems a little bit updated, and so this is going to be a great tablet to get into for making a lot of fall projects. So as you can probably figure out by the title of the video, we're going to be revisiting a wallet fold folio, and we've made these a fair few times in the past, and I'm always on a mission to find better paper. I really want it to be very thin, but I want to be able to have it large enough so that when I get it folded, I'll have a decent sized folio. Now, the last time I made one of these, I think, was last fall, and it was a collaboration project with Renee Bouquet, so I'll go ahead and link that at the top of the description. So if you're interested in checking that out, you can find it easily. For the project we're working on today, I found this wrapping paper from the Dollar Tree, and so I was a little bit skeptical at first because I wasn't sure how far into the paper this pattern was going to go. So for $1 I can go ahead and get that and then check it out when I get home. And I'm pretty happy to say that it is basically solid on the other side. Now, craft isn't always my first choice, but this was what was available, and so I picked this up, and it is very nice and thin. So I've done regular cardstock before. It gets really bulky, and it's limiting to the size that you have is typically 12 by 12. I've also used some Amazon paper before, what comes in your packages, and I really love the idea of recycling, and that did work well. It was just a little bit thicker than this, so once I got folding, I was really happy with how nicely condensed I could get these seams, and so we're not building a great amount of bulk as we work along, and we can add that in later when we put the beautiful pattern papers in. So let's revisit that fold. I'm sure we're all pretty familiar with it. And so for this project, I'm working with a 16-inch square. I was able to get that by rolling the wrap out on my kitchen table. I know that's a square edge, and I used a quilting ruler just to get that size correct. You could just as easily use a yardstick, something like that, to get your measurements out, and then you will just have to cut it along the seams where you mark it. And then for our project, it's going to be 2 of these folded inserts added to some 110-pound paper. You could easily add more. You would just have to adjust the size of your spine so that you could accommodate the bulk of all of those layers. And when we get this folded, we're going to arrive at a 6-inch high by 4-inch wide album, and I think that's so perfect for utilizing the paper in a way that does not create offcuts. And you could even use a 6x6 paper pad for this, and so if you've got a bunch of those hanging around, I would say definitely get those out. You could have full-size sheets with layering patterns on them, or just go through and cut all your pages from the single pieces. So let's go ahead and start folding. And I flipped this around. Hopefully I didn't make anybody's eyes too buggy. And I know that this doesn't all fit in the screen at the moment, but when we start folding it, it will. So like I mentioned, it's 16 by 16, and it will be a benefit to you to get it as close as you can. You don't have to get it precision, exacting measurements, but it will help you if you could get them as close as you can. So the first fold we'll make is just in half, and so hopefully that didn't hurt anybody's eyes. And I just have a seam here that I creased with my bone folder just so that I could continue to condense the amount of bulk that we add. So the next fold you'll do is the halves into the center, and so we're going to wind up with portions that are a quarter of the width. So the next thing you want to do, you see I did already clip this because I had it off just a little bit, but you can correct that as you work along, is to fold in the corners of each of these sides and then fold it back onto your last fold, which brings the edges into the middle, and do that on both sides here so that it looks like this. So the next thing you want to do is fold over where the point where these two sides intersect so that you can have it straight across the bottom, and this will create your pockets. So fold that over again and then line up the very top here with the very bottom on that end. So the next thing to do is just go ahead and tuck these into the pockets. You see how nice this is with it being thinner? You really do struggle. You really do struggle with that when you get any kind of thicker paper. Now, the challenge is that even though I did measure it as best I could, there was a little bit of a gap here, and so the paper with a pattern would be showing, and I don't want that. So I took an additional piece of the craft cardstock. This is just one from that paper pad we used a couple weeks ago. And I measured this to be 6 high by 3 wide. I scored it at 1.5. So now I know that it will be just the right height to fit into that pocket. And you see how that will close that gap and conceal the pattern underneath. So I just put a couple of rows of my double-sided tape here. It will be easier, I think, to take just one side off to begin with. And then I just want to line that up where the fold is, but you see I'm not pressing it down yet because I want to tuck this into the pocket. So I'll get that lined up with the center score, and then before I press it all the way down, I'll just tuck that in to the pocket there and then straighten that out. Now I can remove the tape from the side, and I'll just repeat that process. That will add just a little bit of additional bulk, but I think it will be much nicer to have that pattern underneath disguised. So here is our basic component for this. We're going to need 2 of them for the book that we're making today. And so we'll have 2 pockets here and then 2 pockets on the side. And we're going to go ahead and add some inserts to those to fill this in and use up more of our paper pattern. So this is going to be one side, and I've already completed the other one and we're ready to add it to the book. But the first thing I want to do is add the inserts for this because it's kind of easier when they're not all assembled. And so the pattern paper I picked is a beautiful plaid here, and so this is cut to be 5 7/8 by 3 7/8, and we're going to just utilize the border that we're going to get on that craft cardstock. So I'm just very carefully slipping that into the pocket. I want to make sure that it goes all the way in, and so I don't want the adhesive to grab onto it before I've got it positioned where I want. And I've got one for this side as well. Now you can see that we added that extra piece of craft paper, and it really does help to cover that additional pattern. So I'm kind of just working this one in, same as I did with the first one. And this will be a beautiful pattern to the back of the book, and it will be seen when we have our inserts in. So now I have this, and I also have one for the other side, and I chose kind of a houndstooth pattern for that. It's kind of a check and a houndstooth all at the same time. And you'll see that I have added some pocket squares here, and I'll show you that in a bit. But let's go ahead and bring in the other components for our book. So I've got a couple pieces here of 110-pound cardstock, and what I want to do is give it a cover and make it a nice finished spine, and this also adds a little bit of structure and sturdiness to it. So this first piece is going to be 6 inches high, and it is 8 5/8 inches wide. So I originally made this piece to be 8.5, and when I scored it, I needed just a little bit more room in the spine. That's what I mentioned earlier. If you have more inserts that you want to add, you might want to consider adding some additional space in the spine. So I did that, and then I scored it at 4 and 4 5/8. So it's going to be 6 by 4 with a nice deep spine. And then my second piece is 6 inches high by 8 1/4. I scored it at 4 and 4 1/4. So this is going to be our center, and we're going to get 1/4 of an inch spine for that. So the first thing I want to do is begin to assemble these pieces into a folio. So I'm going to use my 2 glue combo, and that is my double-sided adhesive tape along with some Tombow. Now there will be a little bit of overlap just because of the folded nature of our pocket insert. So if you are hoping for perfection, this might not be the project for you. We're embracing the imperfection for this, and so that's going to work out perfectly. It's always a challenge to figure out the best way to wrangle something that has wet glue on it. I think I'm just going to turn it this way and then line it up along the spine. Hopefully that will be exactly what we need. Okay, so we've got our first set of pages, and this will bridge in between our 2 pockets. So let's remove the tape from here as well. I want to be very careful to make sure that I have both sets of pockets going in the right direction. So I'll just line this up along the bottom and the outside edge. Okay, so the next step is to add the cover, and that will conceal these cut edges. So we'll go back to that first piece that's a bit larger, and we'll just go ahead and repeat the process of removing this backing from the double-sided adhesive and adding Tombow. I think it will be easier now to stand it on its end into the spine, and then just bring that page up onto it. Yes, that was much easier. I'm just giving it a little pressure so that it will grab onto that double-sided tape, and that will hold it while the glue sets up. So let's just go ahead and pull this tape off of the back now and repeat the process. And like I mentioned, because of the imperfect nature of folded things, there is a little bit of the craft paper showing, and that is just fine with me. So I'll press that in now and make sure that it is well adhered. Before I put my Tombow away, I've got a couple more pieces to add to that bridge section, and this is going to give us some full-size flips. So this is 65-pound weight paper, and it's cut to be 6 by 8 and scored at 4, and this is just going to go on the inside of the center portion, and I'll adhere them so that they fold outward, and that will give us a nice display of all of those pattern papers that we add to the middle. So let's just go ahead and line that up, because we know that it is going to be the same page size. So add your corner and then your side and your bottom, and that will ensure that you have everything nice and straight and even. So let's work on this side next. I think that is going to do it for the Tombow. We can go back to finishing the insides now. So as I mentioned, there is going to be covers for our pocket pages here, and I have these cut to match the same pattern that will show on the inside of the page before we add the insert. So I have my paper cut for this to be a 3 7/8 inch square, because our page width is 4 inches. So I reduced it by 1/8 of an inch, and then I cut it from corner to corner. And that way I'll still have that nice border along the top. So you'll be able to see where that pocket is easily. And I'm just going to go ahead and use my double-sided tape for this, because it's not a bendy part, and so this will hold it in place just fine. I do want to just go ahead and line it up along the bottom, and that will give us our nice border at the top of the pocket. So that's the first side. Now I will recommend, if you're doing this, be aware of the pattern that you're using. If it's a very directional pattern, it will not process easily into a corner cut, because one of your halves is going to have to flip over. So I would not recommend a very directional pattern, because you'll have to cut 2 squares, and that is going to cause you to have more offcuts. Okay, so here is our pocket for the wallet portion of this book, and I do want to include some inserts for that. So I decided to go ahead and use the white as a border on the outside. Also, it's 110-pound cardstock, so it does make it a little bit sturdier, and that makes the inserts a little bit more bulky and nice. So this insert is 5.5 inches high by 3.5 inches wide for our 110-pound paper. The cardstock is 5 3/8 by 3 3/8, and the pattern paper is 5 1/4 by 3 1/4, and that will just tuck right down into there. So you can see you got a nice border of that background showing. I've got one for this page as well. There's a little bit of extra room in these pockets if you wanted to tuck some additional things in. If you don't want to adhere them down to the book, that would be a nice place to do that. And so, as I mentioned earlier, these patterns are really beautiful, more farmhouse kind of boho inspired. So the pumpkins have a little gray and a little green in them. And so I think that just kind of updates them and gives it a nicer, more fresher look. And so that will fill up our pockets. Now the next thing I want to do. So the next thing I want to do is finish the flip page portion of this folio, and so I am picking more of the beautiful plaid from the collection, and this is going to be 2 matching on the outside and 4 matching on the inside, just because I like everything to coordinate. So the measurements for our cardstock on this is going to be 5 7/8 high by 3 7/8 inch wide, and the pattern paper is going to be 5 3/4 high by 3 3/4 wide, and that will be the same for the inside as well. And I'm going back to that beautiful boho inspired pumpkin, so I just find it to be a little easier to get things lined up if I have the longer end closer to me. And so I'll just go ahead and add all of these center portions. This would be a really great base for Christmas or Halloween or any collection that you want to work with, as long as you can find that wide, thinner paper. That will be perfect for that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put the back on as well, and that has the same measurements that I just shared for our full-size flip pages. Now you can see how we're going to get a border of the white cardstock from the base, and then we see a little bit of that craft showing as well. And I think all those layers actually just look really nice. So the next thing I want to do is bring in my ribbon, because I want to be able to have a tied closure. So I'll just measure off a generous amount so that I can have a nice size bow. This is a copper colored taffeta ribbon from Really Reasonable Ribbon. I will make sure to link that in the description, because this is one of my fall go-to ribbons for the season. I'm just gonna tack that into place with a little hot glue here, and that will hold it temporarily while we add our cover, and that will sandwich that trim between the book base and the cover here. So once again, this is the same measurements as our flip pages in the back, and I think that beautiful plaid with the lighter green makes it much more contemporary looking. And so I of course want to add a doily, and this is a Recollections die doily that I cut a very nice crisp white cardstock, and that helps to neutralize a little bit of that background. And I've also got an image here. Now, I did not find a cut apart for this that was included in the collection that I liked. This was on one of the sheets as part of the pattern, and so I just clipped that out with a stitched edge there so that it would look more like an actual tag. And I'm placing that just lower and right of center so that I'll have room for my flowers. So here is my flower collection. This is just a arrangement made with a little birdie craft flower and then some that were made by me. I'm using my Lawn Fawn stitched leaves that I picked up for our Halloween series that's coming up here in September. And so I filled that in with a little twine, and I switched out my usual ivory burlap string with some that's in an antique gold, because I really think that it coordinates really beautifully with that taffeta. And I'm just going to put this on for a moment so that I can see where the placement is. And I want to add my little charms here and disguise the cut strings with these leaves. And so I just picked a couple that are kind of a bronzy color, and I thought that was more fall inspired. So I will just tack that on with my hot glue as I do, and then remove the excess string. Then I know when I position my flowers over top that it will hide those cut edges. Okay, before we finish off our album with the sequins that I picked, I want to include some tabbed inserts that will go into the side pockets. And so I went back to that 110-pound cardstock to create the base for these. And so the cardstock itself is 5.5 by 4 1/4, and I used my envelope punch board to notch out this tab. So this is a 2.5-inch tab, and then I use my guillotine cutter lined up there and just remove the excess. So I know that this portion will be sticking out over the edge. That makes them easier to take in and out. And then I've also alternated the tab from top to bottom, and that gives us that little gap that we need for tying that up. We want to put our bow there. So let's start with this one here and slip that into our pocket. And then the next one will be on the bottom. So as I mentioned, there are 2 of these folded inserts that gives us 4 pockets. So let's go ahead and fill all of those with our tabbed inserts. This is a great place to add your journaling as well, so that you have it here and you can keep it outside of the pattern paper, and it will be easier to read that way. Okay, so now you can see with all of our tabs in place, we can still go ahead and tie up our little folio here with our beautiful ribbon. This is going to get a little bit of a wedge shape when you're filling it in, and I actually really love that. So that works well for this design. And you can alter the size of the square that you start with, and that will give you a different set of dimensions as well. So let's just cut the excess ribbon off. And I've brought down some sequins. They're kind of a fawn color. I really enjoy these for my fall projects this year. They're a little bit larger, and so I think 3 will be really nice here on the bottom, and I'll have one up onto the tag so that it kind of covers all of those layers. And I think that Tombow is the best way to add these sequins, so I'll just do that now. So like I mentioned, I will add a link at the top of the description for my previous wallet fold folio that I created for a collaboration with Renee Bouquets, and so you can find the products for that if you follow the links in that video. And this is going to be all for our tutorial today. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave me a comment and a big thumbs up. That really helps out my channel. And you can find other links for our socials in the description below as well. And if you're not already, I would really love for you to subscribe. That really helps my channel quite a lot. So I would be so happy if you would join our crafty little family. And as always, I'm wishing you a happy and productive day, and I thank you so much for watching. Bye.